Hello, my name is Beck and welcome to the intimidating TBR Tag. I've done this a couple of times, but considering we're going into a new year and I've really reduced my reading pile, I thought I'd look at this in a new kind of lens because I want to look at books that I haven't necessarily acquired yet. And I just kind of wanted to analyze this through the goals that I'm starting to think about in my head and make mental lists of. So I think this would be a really interesting video to kind of crystallize some of those thoughts. So let's get into the questions. I'll have everything linked down below, of course. Okay, so the first question is, what is the book that you have been unable to finish? And I don't think I have a new book like this. I have a couple of books that I want to revisit because I DNF'd them. Usually when I don't finish a book, I just unhaul it and it's very decisive. But some books I've gone, maybe I should give them a second chance now that I know what they're about. And so I can't go in with preconceived expectations because I already know what happens. And so I've actually got two on this list. So the first one is The Lies of Lamora. And I know that I'm such a huge fantasy reader, and for some reason I just didn't like The Lies of Lamora. No, it's not that I didn't like it, it's just that I predicted the ending and I didn't connect to the characters and it felt very long-winded, and the time jumps to me felt very jarring. They would just take you out of a moment that you were interested in and throw you into something that seemed unrelated. So because I listened to that on audiobook, it felt even more jarring to me, and in some places it was a little bit harder to follow. So I do want to give that another try because it's like a fantasy veteran. A lot of people really like it. So I want to try and dive back in and see if my thoughts about it have changed. I'm really optimistic about the fact that they have. I really hope that they have, but if they haven't, then I guess I'll find out. The other one is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. And I read this expecting it to be obviously brutal because it's an adult fantasy, and a lot of people say it's very graphic and very brutal and violent, and it also reflects real events in history. So be careful when you go into it because it's quite gruesome. At a certain point, the first half is a magical school, and the magical school part is when I was like 5 stars, love it. And then it did like a 180 and it ditched all the characters that I cared about and tried to set up new characters. And I think if it was done a little bit better, or maybe if my expectations were different, then I wouldn't have been as whiplashed by that as I was in my first reading of it. And so many people rave about this book, so it is obviously worth continuing and these characters must continue to grow, but I just found Rin, the main character, very annoying, and I found the book inconsistent with portraying specific characterization things. I obviously don't want to spoil anything. I read it in a reading vlog and that's also spoiler free, so I'll leave that linked if you want to see, I guess, more of my thoughts as I'm reading it, because it's kind of funny to see me going, oh my god, I love this book, and then to see me in my next clip going, I'm disappointed. It's a bit of a 180, but I really want to try and like this, so I'm going to add it to this list tentatively and see if I can come back to it and like it. Fingers crossed, because I don't have a lot of optimism even though I want to. The next question is, what is the book that you haven't read yet because you just haven't had the time? I have like a pun for this question, and mine is The Wheel of Time. This is book 2 in the Wheel of Time. I've read Eye of the World this year, and I just planned it because I knew that this year I wouldn't get to the rest of the Wheel of Time because I wanted to catch up on a whole bunch of series, and I knew that Rhythm of War was coming out this year, so I'd want to reread a bunch of Sanderson books. So I knew that I had a lot on my plate this year, and now that my to be read pile is 5 and under, I think that I can jump into some new series or some series long standing that have many installments, and that is definitely the Wheel of Time. So when I really set my mind to it, I know that I can push through, a 1200, 1300 page book as evidenced with the Stormlight Archive. So why can't I finish a book that's 700 pages long? So this would definitely be one that I haven't had the time to read. I have had the time technically, I just haven't made the time. So next year in 2021, I'm going to be making the time to read this series, and I'm only buying them one book at a time, because if I buy the entire series and I have it staring at me on my bookshelf, I'm going to be very intimidated. So I'm just going to take it in little bite-sized, well, not little bite-sized chunks, more like a meal at a time, let's say. The next questions all correlate to the same beginning. So it's, what book have you yet to read because? And then question 3 is because it's a sequel. The sequels that I haven't read, I don't think I've actually got that many, because I made a video before and I was like, here are book series that I've completed. I probably have a couple on here that I'm just completely glossing over. Oh, I haven't read the Bone Witch trilogy and I need to reread the first book. I tried reading Heartforger and I just couldn't get into it because I couldn't remember everything that I needed to. So I don't know why, but Audible randomly timed a sale of the whole trilogy on audiobook. So I was like, sold! And I've got the entire trilogy on audiobook. So I think I'm just going to reread the first book on audio and then revisit the other two on audio as well. And hopefully that way I can finish the series. Hopefully it really hooks me and gets me back into it, because it's a series that is a cross between the vibes of Memoirs of a Geisha and the vibes of Name of the Wind, in the fact that there is a main character who has accidentally resurrected her brother and goes to this like institution that is kind of geisha-esque in order to train her magic. So it's also told in different timelines. So we have an older version of her telling you about what's going on present time, and then flashing back to her as she's training, which is a very similar format to the way Name of the Wind is set up. So that's kind of how those combine. And I was really, really hoping that I would stay on top of the series, but I just bought them because they have pretty covers, and then I haven't continued reading them. So fully acknowledge that that is my bad, but I have plans to read it in 2021. So hopefully it doesn't fly by the wayside and I forget about it, because that's not ideal. The next question is question 4, and it's what book have you yet to read because it's brand new? I've been pretty good with keeping up with new releases this year actually, but I do have one. And that is Legendborn by Tracy Dion. And I picked this up because Reagan from Peruse Project raved about this. I've seen other people talk about this. It seems like it's got everything in here that I would really love, so I'm really hoping that I do. It's about a girl who goes to college and then realizes that there is a secret society of magic users and that she's a part of that secret society. I don't know if it's on purpose or just by accident. I think she witnesses something that brings her into that circle, and she also has a mother who's passed away, and I think there is an investigation into her murder potentially as well. It's a YA, not an adult fantasy, even though she's going to college, and I assumed it would be a little bit older, but I believe it also talks about race as well, and racism especially. I'm really intrigued to read this. I don't often pick up hyped up young adult books, especially in urban fantasy space or fantasy space, just because I read so much fantasy that I'm a bit of a fantasy snob, and I don't want to bash on books that have nothing wrong with them except my subjective reading experience. So I'm hoping that I really enjoy this one, because I bought it recently because I really want to try it out. I don't think I'm going to get to it in December, but I do have plans to get to it shortly. So this is one that is definitely brand new, because look how heckin' shiny it is, but I just have not started it yet. The next question is, what is a book you have yet to read because you read a book by the same author and you didn't enjoy it? I don't usually revisit authors that I don't enjoy the first time, which is not great. I can give authors a second chance, but I don't often. Like I said, I do have that video idea, or that project, I guess, where I want to reread The Lies of Lamora and The Poppy War. I have a few other books on that list, but I kind of want to keep them secret for the actual video, because I was planning on doing a video about it, and I'm not really sure how the format of that's going to work yet, but I do have that list at least. There is also another answer to this question, and I really love the Nevernight series by Jay Kristoff, and he's coming out with a new series in 2021 at the end of that year called Empire of the Vampire. And like with Addie LaRue, there is a ton of marketing for it already, and I ended up loving Addie just because of the writing style and the themes and the characterization. But I know that it's not for everybody. So that is a rare instance where the marketing and the hype matched my expectations, and often that doesn't happen. And so when it comes to the Empire of the Vampire by Jay Kristoff, this is an adult fantasy work about vampires that are quite gruesome and gross. And so it seems like it has the grit associated with what it needs to be in order to be successful, at least in my mind. But the fact that it's already being marketed and it's still a year out and people are pre-ordering it already because the hype is so strong, I am really hesitant about going into it, especially because I didn't love Aurora Burning by him and Amy Kaufman, and I didn't love True Life by him either. So I'm really hesitant, and I really hope that I like Empire of the Vampire, because I really want to love it, because it sounds like it's going to be amazing. But I'm also really hesitant because he's burned me in the past just by accident and just by my reading taste. So hopefully this is something that aligns with what I want it to be, and hopefully I really enjoy it. But we will see. September 2021, I believe. I will find out for sure. The next question is, what is a book that you have yet to read because you're just not in the mood for it? I have a bunch. I kind of have books that I set up as a TBR list every month, and then I leave enough space around that to wiggle in mood reads if I want. So it gives me structure without giving me too much pressure, I guess. And one of those books that I'm not in the mood for yet, but I'm anticipating that I'll be in the mood for it early next year, is Red, White and Royal Blue. It's basically a royal romance between two men, and I've heard that it's hilarious and wholesome and cute. And I can't wait to read this. It is one of my friend's favorite books ever. And I have high expectations. So I really hope that I enjoy it. But usually in January, February, that's when I pick up a contemporary or two. So that's why I'm waiting, because I don't often read with the season, but in Australia it is peak summer in December to February. So that is generally why I pick up a contemporary then, just because it feels right, and it feels right to ease myself into my reading year with a contemporary or two to kind of cleanse the palate if I'm reading a lot of fantasy at the time. So it makes me hungry to read more if I read a few contemporaries. Anyway, I don't know if that makes sense, but this is going to be the start of next year. If I don't get to it at the end of this month, which I don't think I will, it's definitely going to be in January or February. So I am building up to the mood to read this. It's already in my mind, so I'm already starting to think about it. So by the time those months roll around, I'll absolutely be in the mood for this. The next question on this list is, what is a book you have yet to read because it is humongous? I read a lot of humongous books, so I don't know if that question is really necessarily valid for me. There is a series that I'm currently reading. I do talk about it a fair bit, so it's not really a secret. I'm reading the Dresden Files at the moment, and I think there are like 18, 7, oh. Okay, I got cut off because I got a phone call, but I think I was on question 8, which was, what book have you yet to read because it's humongous? And I was talking about the Dresden Files, and I'm 8 or 10 books. I'm 10 books out of 18 into that series so far. So it's not like a humongous series, it's just a long series. So I'm making my way through that slowly. So I think that's what I'm going to say for this question. Even though it's not humongous and it doesn't quite match, I think that's it, because I've already talked about Wheel of Time. So I've started that series too. So it wouldn't even count. So let's just move on. And then question number 8 is, what is a book that you have yet to read because it was a cover buy that turned out to have poor reviews? I have recently bought these 2 comics, and these are volumes 1 and 2 of a new series, and I have only seen people mention it by name. I haven't actually heard any reviews about it. I haven't sought out any reviews for it. So I am really hoping that this is a good cover buy, because I just bought it on a whim and I really hope that I enjoy it. So I don't usually cover buy books, but I did with Legendborn, I guess, and I did with these 2. So I'm hoping in the end, when I've read them, that I end up really enjoying them. But the jury's still out. We will see. Hopefully I'll read them very soon. These are only pretty short, so they shouldn't take me too long. And then question number 9, the last question on this list, is, what is the most intimidating book on your TBR pile? And I would actually say the rest of the books in the Passage series, just because they're all so long. So the Passage is 900 pages, and I listened to that on audiobook, and I'm going to smash the other books on audio as well. And so hopefully they don't have that weird genre bend at the beginning with 100-year time skip, because now we're past the beginnings of like the horror section and we're into the vampire apocalypse section. So I'm assuming that it stays in that section unless there are specific small flashbacks. So I think I've passed like the hump of this series and I'm now fully into it. So that is my hope at least. But because there's the rest of the series ahead of me, it's long. Each book is long. So those are the intimidating books on my TBR pile. Also because they're outside of fantasy, which is the genre that is my instinctive go-to. Even though I love apocalyptic fiction, fantasy is my absolute go-to, so it's more of an effort usually to branch outside of that. That is why I'm not saying the Wheel of Time here, because I could very well include it for this question too. So with that said, that is the last question on this tag. If you want to do this, you are tagged as well. I will leave the questions down below because it took me like 4 videos to find the questions in the description, which was quite frustrating. So let me know if you do this tag. Let me know what book intimidates you the most and what series you're reading that's quite long, or that you want to read that's quite long. But thank you again for watching this video. I will chat to you in the comments and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.